So I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting to come back to the beautiful world of Trench Crusade this soon. I was planning on giving it just a little bit of time to cook, with it being currently in playtest, waiting for that Kickstarter to drop, maybe even a core book to drop, and then I would come back, revisit this very, very cool war game I'm a big fan of. And then the video I made absolutely exploded, which I'm actually very happy about. I really, really like Trench Crusade, and I really, really like covering random things that I personally enjoy. So consider it added. I'm going to be talking about it regularly now.
Thank you to all my channel members for making these videos possible.
Who exactly are the Trench Pilgrims? What's their entire vibe? They are the more unhinged faction of the forces of Christianity in the Trench Crusade world. Trench Pilgrims are a group of people who all gather around a common banner, a common person to wage war against the forces of hell and their followers. These are the sick, the sinners, the needy, the pious, the many, who all for many, many different reasons have felt the touch of God, or God's messengers, or just something. Be it the actual, like, force of God, divine calling, because God does have an actual presence in the world calling to people, pulling them into just conscription in the military, or any other sort of thing, really. It's wide-ranging for your reason. Pulling random fucking people to go, all right, I'm gonna go murder a heretic, to go march off to no man's land, pick up a random weapon, be it a shovel, a shitty rifle with a stick at the end, call that a bayonet, I guess, and decide to go wage war. You follow around a prophet or a prophetess who is essentially your one spiritual leader that you then take all the orders from, and you go murder anything that they tell you to with absolute righteous abandon. The most perfect, holiest of zeal. And you all do this with zero official religious sanction from the Vatican Church. You are waging your own personal crusade. That is to say, though, the Vatican and the Pope does occasionally, like, give a bit of tacit, like, yeah, sure, you can take part in this little crusade, because it's actually very noted in, like, for example, it is noted in many of the official Christian skirmishes and battles, the Trench Pilgrims are usually front line, like the first people to charge over the trenches and the barbed wire and first engage with the forces of hell. And all I think this is a pretty easy gig for the church to be like, yeah, let's send these psychos just to go take up all the bullets first, so then the important people get shot less. Now, it's important to mention, I think it's not that far of a leap for you to understand that when I say Trench Pilgrims, they're not like a combined faction. They're not like organized. They don't have a central governing body. It is a bunch of disparate groups of people, all under the same name. There are many different types of Trench Pilgrim, because they're all under their own different types of war bands known as processions, all of which completely varying in type. They all follow a completely different prophet or prophetess who have their own varying beliefs, be they just slightly different or completely batshit wild. So there are some fun ones that it mentions. The specific thing, there's some fun ones all around, but there are two ones that it specifically mentions, like with the rules, because every army has war bands of renown, two that it gives. The Procession of the Sacred Affliction believes very heavily in melee combat. They specifically cover all of their armor and their shields and their weapons with all these icons of faith and icons of saints themselves, because they believe that this will ward off hell. And then they immediately wade right into the thick of it and just start whacking away at people, covering the battlefield in tides of blood, to where they're also the whole time wearing these big ass millstones on their back. Then they look down at the dying heretics, take the millstones off their back, attach it to the necks of the heretics, so then they drown in the mud and the blood. Yeah, very normal behavior. Which we also, speaking of, have Cavalcade of the 10th Plague. And when I say plague, I don't mean it in the you know, Black Grail sense. I mean it in the, Moses and the 10 plagues way, as they, before every battle, sacrifice a shit ton of lambs. I don't know where they get all these lambs, especially out in the random places in no man's land, but they do. They adorn the lamb's blood on their armor and all these holy symbols because they believe that it is going to protect them from the wrath of God on the battlefield that day as they go and wage war. Instead, the wrath of God will be dictated at their enemies, which is literally the 10th plague from, Egypt, the whole killing everyone's firstborn. It's that. Now, another fun fact about this warband is they actually do not believe in the teachings of the Metachrist. They reject all the modern teachings of that era of this world, because this entire warband is we reject the New Testament. We are Old Testament wrathful God, which is pretty sick aesthetically. And yeah, that last one might have perked your ears up just a little bit for 2 reasons. I'll take the first minor one. That sounds a little heretical, right? Rejecting the teachings of the Metachrist. It's because they're not an organized faction. They are a bunch of random people all following one spiritual leader who's basically a cult leader. If I'm going through everything, they follow one person, they take all of their orders. It's a fucking cult where they're all just wielding weapons, going murdering people. But they're effective at it from all it seems, so I guess small victories. And every single warband is like this. It just really depends on the severity of their beliefs, because some just are we like flamethrowers, whoa. And then some are fully we reject the teaching of the Metachrist, we bathe ourselves in lamb's blood. So I guess it just depends. But that second part, the Metachrist. Those of you who might not have seen my initial video, or some of you might just be waiting, who might already know. The Metachrist, let's just get into that. What exactly is the Metachrist? Well, the Metachrist is a clone using the DNA that they recovered from Jesus Christ. It is a clone that they now have that they use to do this divine sacrament, where you partake in the flesh and blood of the Metachrist. When you take the flesh and blood and ingest it, the Metachrist will impart some divine power upon you. The best example we have is in a creature known as the Communicant, which is a playable thing we have. This thing is a giant mass of muscle. It's huge, is wielding a giant weapon. It rapidly regenerates, though it is blind. It loses its senses, so it instead nails crosses to its eyes, and then crosses everywhere else. So, that's something, I guess. The Metachrist does have other powers, because the Metachrist is known to actually revive people when they die. If the Metachrist really likes somebody, they will bring them back from the dead. There is something that's always noted here, as the Metachrist is numbered, as we have currently in the book, the first one, then there's 3, 5, and 7. As it is kind of implied when you hear that, you're okay, I guess we're churning through the Metachrists. No, actually, not at all. I think I've discovered something, and I have receipts for it. So, well, I actually don't know, because when it comes to the FAQ in their Discord, it's all a mystery. We'll know later, probably. So, I found this just searching through when I was looking in their Discord, searching through literally all the messages pertinent for the 2 developers of the game. And I found this when they were answering a rule question, not even a lore question. But it very heavily implies when you read this, it sounds like we aren't churning through clones like they're just going bad. It sounds like we have a fucking tribunal of Metachrists, all of which specializing in something different. Because it sounds like right here, the 3rd Metachrist specializes in melee combat. Based, but what the fuck? I feel like a conspiracy theorist pointing this out. What is this? To my knowledge, I don't know if there's anything else here, but everyone else is talking about the Metachrist and they're dying off. And then I find this one message from the rules designer, and he says that this guy specializes in melee, and I'm what do I believe? Which, that is all the main lore of the Trench Pilgrims. Like I said, we actually don't have everything out yet, so all I can really do at this point is just run you through some of the fun units. Not gonna take super long, because again, still not super much out on them, like the stigmatic nuns. There would be art popping up next to me, but I can't because it is just art of a naked woman. So I can't show you. But these nuns have the wounds of Jesus Christ himself, and they run out killing heretics, because they all do. But they revere the idea of pain and suffering itself. They believe it is a divine gift from the Metachrist. Therefore, it is their Christian obligation as good people to give the gift of pain and suffering to everyone else. Because why would they keep this divine gift only for themselves? We also have anchorite shrines, which are very cool. Anchorite shrines are horrifying amalgams of flesh and machine because they are essentially Iron Maidens on wheels, where they take one monk and they toss him in a giant Iron Maiden, and he slowly dies and just bleeds out as blood seeps out of this giant thing. As, what do you think this thing does? It pilots around and murders heretics. Crazy. And then the war prophets, which is the prophets I was telling you about, the spiritual leaders. Yeah, they're prophets. Prophets with giant 100 decibel speakers on their shoulders, all blasting sermons the entire battle. Loud as fuck, by the way. Like, goddamn. And the castigators, who I think have one of the strongest unit designs I have ever seen. Their shield of hands keep up religious morale, but in the keep up your penitence whipping style morale, and I'm gonna execute you if you don't follow orders kind of way, instead of let's sit down and talk this out, let's, you know, talk our feelings and make you feel better kind of way. But yeah, that is the Trench Pilgrims, which apparently down the line we will be getting some more stuff for them. So we will see if any of their lore changes, and we will see if anything I say here is proven wrong when the actual core book comes out, which I'm curious, I'll keep my eye on. But yeah, that's gonna be it. So if you like this, like, comment, subscribe, do that stuff, join my membership, and see ya.